Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am going to do the chocolate tag. I've seen quite a few different people do this tag, most recently Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. I forget who the original tagger is, I didn't write it down, whoops, but I will find their original video and post it in the description below. So that's what we're doing today because it looked like fun. So I have the questions here, I have some books. Let's get into it. The first prompt is Dark Chocolate, a book that covers a dark topic. I read a lot of dark books, but one that I want to highlight is Split Tooth by Tanya Tagaq. So this is not a memoir, but it definitely pulls from the author's own experiences. I'm just going to read you a little bit from the back to kind of get a sense of the tone of this book, I guess. So a girl grows up in Nineveh in the 1970s. She knows joy and friendship and the love of her parents. She knows the tedium of the everyday world and the raw, immoral power of the ice and sky, the seductive energy of the animal world. She knows the ravages of alcohol and violence at the hands of those she should be able to trust. She sees the spirits that surround her and the immense power that dwarfs all of us. So it's really set in this community where there's, real struggle happening. And there's also a lot of like spiritual and mythological almost elements to the story. But it's one that when I read it, I didn't know what it was going to be. And so it kind of took me aback and I didn't know how to feel about it, but it's grown on me and it's one that has sat with me and that I've thought about a lot since reading, which I think is the mark of a great book. So the next prompt is White Chocolate, your favorite lighthearted or humorous read. And I've mentioned this a couple times now, but this is my favorite humorous read, so I mean, I've got to be honest. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I think I mentioned in a very recent video that this was the first and I think maybe the only book that ever made me laugh out loud. I just really enjoy Douglas Adams's wit. It's really, the jokes are smart. It's a smart book. It's also a lot of fun. You'll like it if you like science fiction. You'll like it if you don't care much for science fiction. It's about a British man who lives a bit of a humdrum life and then suddenly is whisked on this adventure through the galaxy. He escapes the destruction of Earth, which has been blown apart to make way for an intergalactic highway. And it's his adventures in space with lots of fun and quirky characters, and yeah, really funny, but really smart, and definitely something more lighthearted and just like a lot of good fun. So the next prompt is Milk Chocolate, a book that has a lot of hype that you're dying to read. So there are a few, but I'll just pick one, and that is Hamnet by, I'm gonna have to look up her name again, Maggie O'Farrell. It follows Shakespeare's family, Hamnet being his son who dies at the age of I think 10 or 11. So a fictionalized, I guess, account of that. And I've heard nothing but good things about this book. Even people who didn't think it lived up to the hype said it was really, really good. So I have yet to hear someone completely condemn this book. And it, again, I've mentioned this in many videos now, but grief and loss are themes that I really gravitate towards in books. And I like it when books explore grief. And I'd be really interested to read how the author deals with the loss of a son in this context. So that's something that has been much hyped that I really want to read. So the next prompt is Chocolate with a Caramel Center. Name a book that made you feel all gooey in the middle while reading it. There was one that popped to mind immediately because I read it quite recently, And it's a nonfiction book called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And the author explores our connection, our relationship to land and place and nature through indigenous ways of knowing. The author's indigenous, and through scientific knowledge. She is a professor of botany, and through kind of like a personal story. So she explores nature and what it means to us, and does that through different anecdotes from her life. And it was just really beautiful, and it's the kind of book that you read and you just want to like run into the outdoors and like lie down in a meadow somewhere. At least that's how it made me feel, really gooey in the middle. So the next prompt is Wafer-free Kit-Kat Name a book that surprised you lately. And for this, I'm going to choose The Three Body Problem by Liu Cixin. And it's a science fiction book set, well, it starts during the Cultural Revolution in China, and then takes place also about 40 years after that. And it follows a nanotech researcher as he's starting to discover some odd things happening. Through talking with other scientists, starts to learn about really weird happenings in the scientific community, particle accelerator experiments that yield results that make no scientific sense. Researchers start killing themselves because science isn't real, and they're kind of like grappling with their own existence and how the universe works. And it's a very unsettling story. The main character ends up finding out about this virtual reality game set in a world with stable eras and chaotic eras. The chaotic eras being ones where you can't predict how long or short a day or night will be. But based on the summary for the novel, I was really surprised, because the summary kind of gives something away that really doesn't happen until much later in the novel. So I thought I was going to get more of a kind of like space, I don't want to give too much away, but kind of like a more space type of science fiction. And this is much more of a like hard sci-fi dealing with like humanity and what it means, and our place in the universe, and our existence, and the future of humanity, and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I really surprised me, but in a really good way. And it is part of a trilogy, which I also didn't realize. So I am very eager to pick up the second book. The next prompt is Snickers, a book that you are going nuts about. I have raved about this book, but this was back in February. I did Historathon, which was a historical readathon for the month of February. And I picked up this book called The Book of Night Women by Marlon James. And it was one of the best books, if not the best book I've read in many years. I hesitate to say it's a coming of age story. It is, but that's kind of just the narrative in which to tell the broader story of slavery in Jamaica. So it's set during the late 1700s, early 1800s, and we follow an enslaved young woman as she grows up on a plantation in Jamaica. And during this time period in Jamaica's history, it was particularly tumultuous. The enslaved Black population outnumbered white people by, I can't remember now, I had looked it up after the fact. I think it was something like around 30 to 1. So whites were very on edge, and so the enslaved Black people in Jamaica were treated particularly violently and horrifically. Not saying that slavery elsewhere in the world wasn't also bad, but this particular moment in Jamaica's history of slavery was particularly brutal. And it's about kind of like the cycle of slavery and the cycle of violence, and there's a lot going on in this book, but I read it back in February, like I said, and it is now mid-June, and I have not stopped thinking about this book since I read it. I recommend it to everyone I talk to. This is a book I am going to remember forever. So the next prompt is going to be a hard tonal shift. It's hot chocolate with cream and marshmallows. What book would you turn to for a comfort read? So for this, I've already mentioned Anne of Green Gables in many videos because they are books I enjoyed as a child, but another series that I enjoyed growing up that are very much comfort reads to me are the Little House on the Prairie series, particularly On the Banks of Plum Creek. So this is the fourth in the Little House series, and this is when Laura's family moves into this dugout, and her pa's trying to build them a regular house. He's trying to start a farm. There's I think there's a chapter when locusts destroy their crops, so it's kind of like that typical settler narrative. There are a lot of scenes in here that were in the television series. So if you're familiar with the television series and the characters there, like Nellie Olson and all the cast of characters, they're all in this book. They weren't in the previous books. And yeah, I would actually be interested to reread the Little House series because I haven't read them since I was a kid, and I definitely wouldn't have picked up on maybe the more problematic parts of settler mentality. So I'd be interested to read it from that viewpoint now. They don't really have any interaction with Native Americans in this particular book, but they do in the Little House on the Prairie book, which I've only read that one once or twice. So yeah, regardless of whether it's problematic or not, these are always going to be comfort reads to me because they just bring me back to when I was 8 or 9 years old, and I loved running around in the meadow and picking flowers and pretending I was Anne of Green Gables or Laura Ingalls. So yeah, this is definitely my favorite of the Little House series. So the last prompt is Box of Chocolates. What series have you read that you feel has a wide variety and a little of something for everyone? I am going to recommend one of my favorite series, and I will say I haven't read all of these books because there's 40 something odd books in this series, but I have read a few and they're all great, and that's the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. So I just have a few here. The first is The Color of Magic and The Light Fantastic. These could follow the same main characters, but some in the Discworld series do follow characters throughout multiple books, but others are more standalone. They just all happen to be set in this fantasy world, but you can read them in any order. So like I said, the first two very much are kind of like a sequel, like a sequence of events, but if you jump right in with The Light Fantastic, it wouldn't make a difference. You would really enjoy it. And the reason I recommend these to basically anyone is even if you don't, even though these are fantasy books, you don't have to like fantasy at all, I don't think, to enjoy these. I mean, if you do enjoy fantasy and magic, you would like these. But also if you enjoy humor or absurdism, you would like these. If you enjoy political commentary, I think you would like this series. Or also action and adventure, I think you would like these. So I think they appeal to kind of a broad array of readers. All right, so that was the chocolate tag. I'm not going to tag anyone. I'm just going to say that if you would like to do this tag, to go ahead and do it. If you don't have a YouTube channel, but you'd like to share like your thoughts on any of the books I mentioned, or if you have an answer for any of those prompts, please share it below. I would love to chat with you in the comments. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I hope everyone is doing well, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.